Nate, how you doing today?
I'm chilling. How about yourself?
Man, I'm blessed and highly favored, man. First of all, before I say any of the stuff that I usually say on my shows, I want to say I love them glasses, man. Hey, you looking good.
Oh, thanks. We got a similar look going on, I see.
You know what it is. I saw some of your older posts. You used to say "nerd alert," and I know all about that because I be looking like a nerd most of the time.
Yeah, man. That's what it is. Law school did it to my eyes, man.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that because we're going to talk a little bit about law school a little bit later in the show. But before we get to that, uh, for those who don't know, Nate Jones is an agent and marketer for NBA players. He works with players like DeMar DeRozan, Matisse Thybulle, Jaylen Brown, Jamal Crawford, and oh yeah, this one guy that if you know me, he's my favorite player, Damian Lillard. So he works with these guys and all the ads and just all the off the court stuff that you guys see. Nate Jones, he works with them on a lot of that type of stuff. But before any of that, he's one of the cleanest brothers from California. Repping out there. But Nate, as I ask everybody on this show when we get started, I got to ask you the same thing because nothing changes. Have you smiled today?
Yeah, a little bit. At some point. At some point.
What'd you smile
I,
about?
I, I appreciate your positivity on the daily. I picked up on you. I picked up on your positivity. I picked up on your hustle. I respect it. I see some of my friends like Chris Haynes did your live stream before, so I figured I'd have to join and show some similar respect.
I appreciate that. I know that you don't usually do these. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna bring my best no matter who's on the show. But since Nate Jones is on the show, I gotta especially bring my best for this. So I'm so glad to have you on today. But what'd you smile about today?
What did I smile about today?
He wasn't ready for that.
I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for that. I also wasn't ready for my wife in the background saying nothing. You just couldn't hear her, so
Oh, all right.
she was just giving me a hard time. But yeah, I'm not. I don't remember. I think the last thing I really laughed out loud about and smiled about was a viral video that went around with the Turkish coach slapping all his players,
He just
and
going
the
around
fact
that
that that would
circle.
never fly in the United States. Yeah, I mean, he didn't just slap one of them. He slapped every single one, every single one, and not one of them got up and did anything about it. It's just different cultures, you know. So
Hey,
definitely, I think that was the last thing I remember laughing out loud about.
for the people that don't know what we're talking about, just make sure you go to Nate's page. He definitely posted that video. I remember seeing it. But Nate, if you was in those players' positions, what would you have done if the coach came
I
around
mean,
just slapping everybody?
I mean, I don't know if I would be in those players' positions because again, they're in another country, another
Yeah.
culture. Like I don't know what that structure is, but in the United States, that's fine. Somebody's getting up and getting in the coach's face, slapping back, and if not, then their mom or dad are coming in there and confronting the coach afterwards. So
Somebody's coming in. But no, that's a perfect reason to smile. It made me smile when I saw that you posted that.
yeah.
But another reason that I've smiled is because I saw how big of a fan of the WWE that you are.
Oh,
And and man, oh man, oh man, when I saw that, that was like the number one reason why I had to set up this conversation because I'm like, man, I'm not as big of a fan of it as I used to be because I'm a big fan of the Attitude Era, but there's always going to be that little kid inside of me that's just such a huge fan of the WWE. There was a few weeks ago where I made a post that was talking about Damian Lillard and the conversation that he had with, uh, I think, Complex Sneakers, and he was talking about the different wrestlers that he used to watch, and he mentioned Rikishi. And I
yeah,
was like, man, if you know Raikisha, you must be a real fan. And I know that you saw it, and I was just like,
yeah.
man, this is amazing. So that,
He,
that
he
was
is a
about,
he is a real fan. He's a real fan of the Attitude Era. I'm a real fan of I guess they call it the golden era and the attitude era. I've kept up a little bit of what's going on now. I watched WrestleMania this weekend. My wife's a big fan of Roman Reigns for
man,
whatever reason, so watching watch his match, watch the women's match between Bianca Blair and uh, I always forget her. I know her real name, Mercedes. blue hair. What's
I know that the WWE is real progressive, and I think they do a great job of that right now. Of course, it's not like the Attitude Era, but they're doing a great job as far as making inclusion for women. Women main eventing like WrestleMania on Saturday night and all that type of stuff. So
yeah,
you
man.
gotta.
The Sasha Banks match was, Bianca Blair Sasha Banks match was impressive, not only because of like what they're doing in the ring, like they're like crazy athletes, like unbelievable athletes. The stuff that they're doing is super entertaining. It's both like they're doing great, wrestling. It's like the storytelling and
Mhm.
the actual like, it's not just high spots. There's like a story to it that they
Right.
really have, put together. And then there's two black women in a championship match. Like
Right.
now it's like you're knocking out two things, like the women main eventing, and it's two black women doing that, which is showing you how much the times have changed, right? So yeah, it's been interesting. But yeah, I think we all have it's interesting that like cultural threads that go throughout for like young men of a certain generation, right? Like
Right.
everybody watched WWE, everybody grew up under Jordan and like that basketball Jordan, AI, Kobe, like those things that all, bring us together because it was kind of like monoculture in a lot of ways, right? Like everybody watched the same things, listened to the same things,
Yeah.
experience the same thing. So I think WWE is a big part of that, and that's the reason. When with Damian when he does his collabs with WWE or former wrestlers, we've done two so far. One with Stone Cold, one with Ric Flair. We got one coming up for the Dame 8 that's going to be, continue to be that level of guy. Guy or guys, I would say. So it should be fun to continue that.
Oh, I'm excited to cop some. I haven't been able to cop any yet, but trust me, the stimulus done hit my bank account, so I'm gonna have to cop me some very soon. So I'm excited for those day and mates.
Yeah.
But but get to some of the questions that I sent over to you. We're right along on the WWE trend of this conversation.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, like you said, there was the wrestlers that we watched, and then the basketball players we watched, and I was just wondering, like, man, there's a certain parallel that you can make with certain wrestlers and certain superstars in the NBA. So I had a list of guys that I sent over to you, and I had to do some research myself. So I got on a Reddit thread, and I'm really looking this stuff up. I'm really lost in why people are saying this wrestler goes with this NBA player, but I got a few and that I sent over to you, so I'm really excited to hear what your answers are. But for the first wrestler that I sent over to you, and mind you, this is Attitude Era. This isn't the Ruthless Aggression era, or the era that we're in now when it comes to WWE. So mind you, especially with this wrestler, keep this in mind. But with the Undertaker, when he was Biker Attitude Era, part of the Brothers of Destruction Tag
Yeah.
Team Champions, that era, who do you think in the NBA paralleled with the Undertaker?
Parallel with the Undertaker, I think are you talking about his whole career or just that Attitude Era guy?
Well, see, that's the thing. I was thinking like, man, should I limit it to just the Attitude Era? But no, I'm open it up. Let's just hear what you got.
Man, I would say you got to go with someone that played like a long time
Yeah.
and no one was able to really knock him off his throne, right? Like, so when I think about it, you're narrowing it down to a few guys. You think about, obviously this is an older guy, but Kareem, because
Uh-huh.
Kareem went through so many different eras. Came in, and his rival was Wilt when he came in,
Yeah.
and when Kareem left, the newer generation of centers had started to creep in. So he had Hakeem, and he was battling Hakeem and Patrick Ewing when he left. So that's kind of like a real similar situation to what the Undertaker did, where the Undertaker came in 1990, November 1990, and he retired 30 years later. No one's played 30 years in the NBA, but Kareem played 20 years in the NBA.
Yeah.
And before that, for 4 years in college basketball, he obviously didn't play his freshman year. The rules were different back then. but for 3 years in college basketball, he was the most dominant force we'd seen. And I think that consistency all the way through, that he was the captain, and they refer to Taker as like the guy that when you come in, you show your respect to him, and if he likes you, then you're good. And I feel like that's kind of how it was with Kareem. The only other parallel I could make maybe would be LeBron. LeBron would be up there,
Right.
just because of all of that. But I think the parallel for the two of them would probably be Kareem and him.
See, I saw that a lot on the Reddit thread, and then I also saw Tim Duncan.
I was thinking about Tim Duncan too, but Tim was way more Tim was way more like low key.
Yeah.
Kareem was the hype around Kareem was something different. Like everybody expected Tim Duncan to be a great player, and he was a fantastic player. But Kareem was like, looked at as he's possibly going to be the greatest player of all time. And honestly, arguably, he has an argument. I mean, he was, again, if he would have been able to go straight to the NBA, he would have been a top 5 player like immediately in the league. And he arguably was a top 5 player for 20 years. If you count his top 5 player in the world for 20 years, count his college time, all the way to when all the way until about 20 years after. Like, obviously the last few years of Kareem's career, he wasn't that same guy, but he won the Finals MVP in '85. Like,
right,
he was still the man. So that's why I kind of like look at it that way. Tim had kind of like started. He wasn't Finals MVP level Tim Duncan towards the end of his career. So that's kind of the way I look at it.
And another thing before I move on to the next wrestler is that another thing that I would mention with Kareem is that a lot of times in these GOAT conversations, he's often left out. And I feel like it's the same way when it comes to The Undertaker. Of course, you're going to be talking about Stone Cold, The Rock, Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, but it's not often that you hear about The Undertaker. And it's kind of the same way when it comes to Kareem in these GOAT conversations, because you often hear LeBron and Michael Jordan, rightfully so, but, Kareem has an amazing career when you go down the list of accolades, and then, of course, the unstoppable hook shot. So,
so that's again the reason I think that I make that parallel. The Undertaker. I think a lot of people have him on the GOAT list, but his highest highs were, he got to a certain level and he kind of stayed like that. Whereas, if you look at a Stone Cold or a Hulk Hogan or The Rock, and The Rock even more so, like outside of wrestling, they became this otherworldly figure. And whereas Undertaker is really kind of just known for his, his WWE persona and in the ring, and like that being him and being Mr. Consistent with that. I think that's kind of, I see why there's a little bit of a parallel there.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next wrestler. You mentioned him a second ago, but of course we got to talk about Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah.
I ain't going to say it because, this is a PG show, but everybody knows the beer drinking monster himself, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Who would you parallel in the NBA to him?
Oh, man. I mean, to me, his parallel to me, I think is Dame.
Ooh.
I think it's Dame. They both are stone cold assassins. That's really what it comes down to, right? Like, obviously, Dame has he's his on-court persona is a little bit quieter, but like that beast inside of him is parallel to what Stone Cold's like.
Hey, you're around Dame often. Does he drink beer as much as Stone Cold Steve Austin?
Not as much, but I don't think anyone does. But he actually has a partnership coming up that you'll hear about soon in that category. So
I'm excited to see it. Like I said, I'm copping them shoes immediately. Whatever it is, I'm making sure I'm trying to cop whatever WWE and Dame got.
We got a lot of fun stuff coming around that. So
absolutely. But I think my comparison for Stone Cold for me was Kobe Bryant.
Mm.
And I'd say that because of the snake persona, and
Yeah,
also with Stone Cold, he ushered in the next era, the Attitude Era. And I think it was the
yeah,
same thing with Kobe Bryant. They just came out with the Ready or Not '96 draft documentary, and they were talking about how this draft was ushering in the next era. And it was the same thing with Kobe Bryant. Like, Michael Jordan is about to retire, and, who's next? And it was Kobe Bryant. So that's why I picked Kobe Bryant for Stone Cold.
yeah, man. I think that's a great answer as well. You can't. The mama mentality is what it is, and um, he kind of Kobe when he at his peak was one of those guys that like people are like, man, he's not friends with anyone. He doesn't go
Yeah.
out with anyone. He doesn't do whatever. And Stone Cold was kind of that same way. He's the DTA, don't trust anybody. Like, it's um, you know, yeah,
Right,
and
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. Well, the next wrestler I got, my favorite of all time by far. We got the People's Champ, The Rock, and like you said, he's a larger than life personality in
Yeah.
the ring and also outside of the ring. Who do you have in the NBA that parallels with The Rock?
Man, who do I have in the NBA that parallels like though? I didn't really give thought to this one. You gotta give me a second. I'm
No,
trying to
no,
think.
you're good. I'll go ahead and go first to, give you some more time. But I said Michael Jordan, and I said that because Michael Jordan left and came back. He retired a few times and came back and was able to, still be at the top of his game. And it's a similar scenario with The Rock. He leaves and comes back from Hollywood and comes back even, not too long ago, and wins the WWE Championship at WrestleMania against John Cena. So, just that greatness. And of course, always, being in the GOAT conversation, I think The Rock is paralleled with Michael Jordan for me.
I'm gonna say this. I think The Rock is a combination of Larry Bird and Magic Johnson.
Hmm.
And I'm gonna say Magic is The Rock now. He's that off the court, the off the field, outside of the ring. This business juggernaut, and the person that everybody he's got that megawatt smile. From
Yeah.
here to Bangor, Maine, right? Like that's Magic Johnson, and The Rock has kind of like become that guy. Like that's who he is. But then in his playing days, he was the one that would talk trash and back it up. He would tell you that you were a jabroni, you were whatever. I'm the best. I'm whatever. And I think Larry Bird had a lot of that persona, but obviously wasn't really talked about until after he retired. But like he was the guy that talked so much trash, he would get Dr. J, like who's the coolest cat around,
Yeah.
to lose his temper and lose his poise and everything else. So I can see a little bit of parallel there where he's got a little bit of both, which is perfect because those guys were like Magic and Bird and synonymous with each other. So it's like two sides of the coin. You got that guy that's going to tell you and talk trash and get under your skin or whatever, and then you got Irvin Magic, who's Mr. Business, Mr. Loved by everyone, got his hands in a bunch of different things. The Rock is. I always tell people I think The Rock is the best current day, spokesperson there is. Like I think Dame is amazing, but like I also think The Rock is. He's been around for longer, so he's able to have a little bit bigger of a platform. I think Dame is aspiring to get to that.
Right.
But the way that he consistently like picks his partnerships and is truly out there pushing everything that he's doing in ways and connecting with fans, elevating fans. Like, one of my philosophies about working in a space around, personalities and all that stuff is really trying to consider the fan first aspect. I think too many, athletes and people around athletes don't consider those things in terms of how you market. Like, you got to think about what the fan is looking for, and The Rock really, really digs into all that.
Yeah,
What's
I
good,
love
huh?
I love that
I'm
comparison.
starting to look. I'm starting to look and see some of these comments, man.
Hey man, no, go ahead, give shout out. Hey, we do shout outs on this show. This like Nick Cannon and
Yeah.
Wild and Out. Go ahead, get some shout outs. I ain't mad at
One of Damien's uncles just said it was good. So
you. Well, I had two more comparisons. I just want to see what you thought of them because I saw them on the Reddit thread and I was just so lost. And I know that Magic Johnson is your favorite player, and you just mentioned
Yeah,
him
favorite
being.
player of all time. That's the reason I love that. If it wasn't for Magic, I wouldn't be. I don't think I would have loved basketball the way that I do. I don't think I'd be in this business. I don't think any of that. Like,
Right.
you know, just just has inspired me in every way in terms of wanting to be a part of basketball and the way that he played basketball and all that. So, yeah.
Man, it's something about them LA athletes, man. Mine is Kobe. He was that guy for me.
Kobe
Like
still. How old are you?
I'm 23.
You're 23. So Kobe, you're younger. So that's how Magic was for me, right? Kobe, what Kobe was for me is more like a peer. Like he was like almost like a little bit of an older brother, right? Like we like the same age basically.
Right.
And I look at him as like we came up together versus like somebody I was looking up to or admiring or whatever else. Whereas Magic, it was like I was not, when I really became a super crazy Magic fan, I was like 8 or 9 years old. So, you know what I mean? Like, which is probably what it was for you with Kobe.
Right.
So,
yeah, I just remember falling in love as soon as I see the way he played. That's who I fell in love, and that's how I fell in love with the game. I was like, man, that passion. But
yeah, that's I think that's what hooks it. I mean, Kobe, you see the same thread through all the greats, all the greatest players from any era. Is they have this passion, and it's not just about. I think people get caught up and think that the players are just completely driven by money, which that's one of the benefits for being the best. But they want to be the best because they're just motivated to be. Like that's who they are. They're driven on a level that most athletes, beyond even like the top athletes in the world. Really, when you're dealing with the NBA, you're dealing with the best 450 players in the world, and it's dog eat dog because there's typically I would say like 45 new guys coming for those spots every year because you got 30 first round picks plus second round picks and overseas and free agents and stuff like that. 30 first round picks are guaranteed spots. Plus, let's say 15 out of that other bunch, so 45 guys are losing their spot every year, right? So, like, if you're not on top of your game, if you're not to that level, you're not long for the league. So, to be the best when you're dealing with that sort of competition, it tells you the type of level of dedication, not only just the talent, but the dedication, the drive, all of the above that you have to have in order to stay at that level.
No, I 100% agree. But I was going to ask you with the Magic Johnson comparison. I saw on the Reddit thread they compared him to Shawn Michaels, and in the sense that they're showmen that won at the highest level.
Yes, the showstopper and Magic. Yeah, I can see that 100%. I can see that comparison. I think that's a really good comparison. But I would say, Michael, like there's some Michael Jordan aspects to it too. There's some, Steph Curry aspects to it. Like anybody that plays with a little bit of flair, right? Like they're showmen. The showman, the WWE. You think of Ric Flair. You think of Shawn Michaels. You think of Jericho.
Yeah.
Shit, you think of the Macho Man. Like
ooh.
yeah. I mean, those are all showmen. All the showmen, and there's a lot of showmen there's been a lot of showmen in the NBA. From Magic, who's maybe be the top guy, but you got the Pistol Pete's, you got Michael Jordan, Steph Curry, like guys that play with a little bit more flair and pizzazz. I think people always, it's so funny the persona that Steph Curry has like publicly. That guy is like he's a showboat. That's his. That's it, and I love it. I love it because he knows he's good, and he's gonna tell you about it and show you that he's that guy.
Yeah, get a little stimmy, just something. But my last comparison that I have for you on this topic, because we can go all day, and I would love to, but I know Instagram's gonna cut me off, and also I promised you 30 minutes. So
yeah, I'm not in any rush. I've set aside time for you. So
I appreciate that. But my last comparison that I have that's on the Reddit thread, and I just want to see what you think about it, is John Cena being compared to LeBron James, just being polarizing figures that some people love and some people hate, and then they've both been good for a very long time.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see people um, doing that. 100%. I mean, Cena was you know the face
Hmm.
of that. Like, I mean, really, it's been 15 years, right?
Man,
So
it flew by
it's
too.
2000. He won in his first championship in 2005.
Hmm.
And this was his 2021 is like the first year he hasn't been in WrestleMania.
Right.
So it's been 15 years of him. Him and LeBron have like that parallel. They kind of came around at the same time.
Mm.
LeBron's still going. Cena's kind of transitioned into movie to see he's going to be in Fast and the Furious, and he's in all these commercials and TV shows and whatever else. He's trying to follow in The Rock's footsteps, which is interesting because LeBron gets a lot of that about following in Michael Jordan's footsteps and all of that. So I could kind of see the parallels there. But I don't know if I necessarily have Cena at the top of, and maybe it's just because I didn't really watch him. I'm
Hmm.
kind of caught up on some of his best matches on the network.
Yeah.
I watched him versus Shawn Michaels. I watched him versus um, what's my man's name? CM Punk. That whole rivalry.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that he's seen him versus Triple H. I think that was in Chicago in 2006. I watched that. I watched a bunch of his like top matches. So he's the real deal. But
Yeah.
um, LeBron to me is like one of the three greatest players ever.
Like no question.
Like there's no question.
Right.
There's no like doubt or question about it. I think that there's have been players that probably had like a peak better than him, or like maybe they had a 5-year run like better than him. But like in terms of his consistency,
Mm.
and it's hard for me to speak on people that I didn't watch. Like I don't talk about Wilt because I didn't watch Wilt
Right.
play. Like I've seen highlights of Wilt. I got to see a little bit of Kareem play. I got to what is it? I saw a good part of Magic Johnson's career, but I just don't like to. I don't like to comment on people that I didn't watch at all.
Right.
But out of my lifetime, I don't know how anyone could knock LeBron. At the end of the day, his like consistency has been there,
Right.
and it's still there. His dedication and consistency is still there.
Absolutely. And no, I'm 100% right there with you.
Yeah.
Uh, but I gotta ask you this one question, and it's just on the topic of the WWE because I've been thinking about this, and I was just like, man, who's one of my low key just favorite wrestlers that's probably not anybody else's like favorites, but they're just my favorite. And the favorite that I came up with, this might catch you off guard, is D'Lo Brown.
yeah, yeah. I I respect that. I respect that. Dame likes D'Lo a lot. I actually got a weight vest behind me on this chair. I always sit when I'm done with it. I put it up here, but I got it right when the pandemic started. When I first put it on, I was like, man, I feel like D'Lo Brown walking around the neighborhood like that. Exactly. Exactly. Dave said he used to walk around doing that head shake all the time when he was younger. So I think that's just like cross generations. People loved him. He had a little unique. He had his time. He had his little run. That most pro wrestling has that parallel to the NBA, whereas most of those guys are not long for the game.
Right.
Like you got to stack your chips and be smart with your money and whatever else because you know 5 years go by and that might be it for you. We remember the guys like Cena that have been around for 15 plus years and whoever else. But I mean, even look at what Stone Cold's actual run was. Like he really came to power like towards the end of '96, all the way to, and then he retired in 2003. Like it wasn't even 10 years.
Right.
He's eating off of that still, but like. It's not like he was able to make money for 20 years doing that.
Right.
Big events and main events and things like that.
Absolutely. But And I know that we can go all day talking about WWE, WWF, Attitude Era, but I'm gonna go ahead and move it along. I know that you mentioned law school earlier, and it made me think because I was just researching about you, and I was like, man, I wonder how that comes into play with what he does now. I know that there's times in school where, I wasn't really paying attention, but there's certain things that I would hear when I wasn't sleeping. There was to be certain things that I would hear and I'll use it now. I'm like, where did I get that from? And I take a second. I'm like, man, I got that back from school. So
Yeah.
like with law school, like how does that play into what you do now?
I mean, I would say this: the first thing is it's just a different way of thinking and approaching stuff beyond understanding, the way the law works and general legal theories and principles. I would say just a different way of thinking. I think it also teaches you. I feel like I was disciplined before, but it also teaches you how to be disciplined in terms of like the effort that you have to put into, um, being prepared for certain things within law school is important. And there's just like you said, there's stuff that you know offhand that you probably wouldn't have known before. I don't practice.
Right.
I'm more of a businessman than anything. But I rely on my education. My education helps me every single day. We see all sorts of contracts and agreements and thinking of particular issues. Damian has he has a music persona and a record label that I've helped him with, and it's all stuff that and concepts that I knew coming out of school. So
Man, that's amazing because that's the thing. Like, I would never think, like, man, law school would help, you do what you do. But even though it does, like, and it comes up, like you said, it's just like times where you probably didn't think it would come up. But,
man, knowledge just helps you with anything, like
right,
understanding things. Like I'm one of these people that it's a gift and a curse, but I just need to know the answer to everything. Like
yeah,
I'm constantly looking up things and situations. I probably should be. I can't even watch a television show without like digging into
man,
who's who, where were they. Like I've recognized their face before. What show were they on? Like all of that. So I always want to know the details of people and situations so that I can put like the puzzle pieces together and like understand like fully what everything is. It drives me crazy when I recognize someone's face, but then I don't remember. I can't put the puzzle together.
right,
So I think I think Amazon Prime is the one doing it now. But when you're watching
yeah,
shows, they put if you put it on pause, it tells you who's in the
but at the
scene
bottom,
at the bottom, which is just like that's amazing to me. Yeah, that's how I work. So I think the more knowledge, the better. I took a negotiation seminar and like experiencing that aspect of it. I think so many people go into negotiations thinking like the goal is to like meet each other in the middle and split the difference and like all these principles that are just completely like false. Understanding all areas of the entertainment business and how they contract in the movies versus television versus sports versus endorsements, like all of that stuff. Yeah, man.
no,
It's just stuff that like you take for granted, I guess. It's because at the end of the day, you're like, damn, the student loan bills due. Like maybe I didn't need this after all. But
yeah.
um, it's what it is.
No, I'm the same way. I can never leave things at the surface. I'm like always looking at Wikipedia, just digging deeper, and
Yeah,
I get I get haggled about this, but that's just the way I am. So never change, Nate, because I feel like that's an amazing way to be. Like just to know all those details under like why this TV show ended at this season and all this type of stuff. And I'm just like, I just got to know. And then like,
yeah,
go ahead.
yeah, man. That's what it is. I mean, you want to. I guess there's boundaries that you have to have for certain
Yeah.
people. You don't always have to be that person, but it's a habit for me.
Man, I'm still practicing self-control, so no
Yeah,
worries. But
yeah,
I know that you mentioned earlier about, this is one thing that players overlook when they're, working on their products, and that's, keeping their fans in mind. And
Yeah,
I was just curious about that because, you know, over the past year, I've made some videos that have been able to go viral, like with Dwayne Wade scene and all the type of stuff. And,
yeah,
you know, it's just me being authentic to me and also, you know, understand like fans want to see this, but at the same time, I got to stay true to who I am, not just be selling myself just to talk about the GOAT debate and all this type of stuff.
yeah.
So, my question to you would be like, when you're in these meetings, how do you balance pitching an idea that is authentic to the players that you work with, but is also attractive to their fans?
Well, I think number one is you're formulating what the athlete wants before you even go into those negotiations, right?
Mm.
So in order to be a good representative, in order to be a good agent, you have to have a relationship and an understanding of the person that you're working with, a deep understanding of those things and what they represent and what their goals are. And then you can kind of like formulate what partners fit and what don't. And as you're having that conversation, you have to be real with them and explain to them the value of the business, what the business is, how it works, and what the value of fans are. You know, a guy like Damian, he completely understands that and is grateful for the way you know, how his fans out there and the way that they support him and buy tickets and watch the games and buy merchandise and whatever else. He understands how the business works and what his duties are as an athlete and the face of a team and a league and whatever else, right? But at the same time, he's never tolerate fans being completely disrespectful and whatever else. So there's a balance there. But the majority of fans aren't that way. There's just people that stand out and they're trolls and whatever else. But from my perspective on the fan aspect is the fans drive all the revenue for the players in the game and everything else. So if they want if they're interested in seeing certain things or kind of just have to put yourself in their shoes and think about that versus just doing things your way. Like we just today announced Dame's deal with Tissot, a watch company. And Damian's had opportunities to sign with tons of watch companies. Obviously, Tissot has an NBA partnership that makes sense. But for us, we were really looking into a partnership where we could do something where fans would potentially be able to afford a watch. Like he could go and do a luxury watch, like a super luxury watch brand, which you've seen some athletes do, but really they're just doing it to get access to the product. But it really is like, how can you actually connect with your fans on that level? Because they're never going to be able to afford that stuff. Like not never, but like most of the fan base, especially when you're talking about kids, they're not going to have a $10,000 Rolex. That's a cheap Rolex. Like that's not even right. Like they're not going to spend that type of money on a watch. So
Right.
your partners have to be something that is authentic to you, but also your fans can connect with you on. If they can't afford it or they can't, like it's beyond their means, then what's the point of doing it? I mean, Dane's thought about it the same way with the pricing of his shoes. Merch we do for music, like you see a lot of the stuff that the merchandise that people put out, it's super expensive. Everything is like in line in regards to that. He's conscious of that because he also was that kid, right? And spending that kind of money wasn't always the most feasible thing.
Yeah, no, that's big facts. I really appreciate you guys because I just copped some Dame merch. It was the uh, Hooper turned rapper shirt, long sleeve
Yeah,
shirt.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's really interesting. So Dame grew up not only his family, but like his extended. He looks at them as family, his extended family, his extended cousins, guys he played basketball with, was friends with in high school, played AAU ball, whatever. They all are super talented in their own ways. And one of his friends he grew up with is named Thomas. He goes by Moo. But he designs all his merch, and that's like one of the dope things that he did with that. And that's done really well. We've sold out like a few times and restocked it. So he's got some new stuff coming soon. But yeah, he's keeping it all in the family. So Moo, who's actually worked for Adidas and worked for Ethica and a bunch of other different stuff, is the one working on all of this. So
and shout out Move because that shirt clean. All right,
yeah, it's
I had to
dope.
copy it.
It's dope. It's dope, and I love that aspect about Dame too, is that he's always trying to like figure out how he can partner with the people that he's come up with, if they've done it for themselves, right? Like Moo put himself in a position, college educated, trained the right way, all that stuff. You know, it just made sense.
Absolutely. I see somebody just asked a question about the NFTs, and I was also, curious about that. Can you elaborate more on, that space of, you guys are branching off into that? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, man. Number one, first I want to apologize. I don't know if you can hear or not, but sometimes I can hear things that other people can't. But there's like a power washer thing going outside, so if that's picking up, I apologize.
No, you're good.
Yeah. So the NFT connectivity, it's interesting. I'm still learning myself. At the end of the day, NFTs is just it's proof of ownership of something. It's just on a digital fashion on the blockchain. But I think that people are interested in possessing and connecting with athletes in as many ways as possible. I just did a sports lawyers association conference recording, like I think it was Tuesday, and we were talking about how it was in the early days of Twitter and social media, and how like the new autograph became like getting a response from your favorite athlete or favorite celebrity on Twitter. And then, now you got Cameo. And now from Cameo, now you're getting into NFTs and collectibles. And it's just another way to be able to connect with your favorite athletes. It's just on a different medium this time because we've got digital natives. Like you, like you said, you're 23?
23.
Yeah, it's 23, right? So like you never knew a world where there was no internet.
No.
Right?
Hey, don't try to date me. I know a little bit.
I'm saying truly you didn't know a world where there was no internet. The internet was already on its way when you were born, and when your memories really started to pop up. The internet was definitely a thing, right? And you never knew what a rotary phone was, a phone book, like all those things. So the way that you connect and understand and connect with fans is completely different than what my generation's like. I'm the first year of the millennials, but it's I still remember a rotary phone. I remember pre-internet days. I remember the Beckett for my collectibles, right? Like all that stuff is out the window now. You probably have never had a cable subscription. I'm assuming you haven't.
I definitely at Time Warner. I was the #1 subscriber.
Oh, so you're a little different because I would say most people your age, they've never had a cable subscription. They've completely gone through the internet and figure out ways to stream games and get access to content without a cable subscription.
Let me say this. I'm 23 years old, but me and my sister always talk about this. My soul is really 30. All right.
Oh, all right. Got you. Makes sense. But yeah, it's just experiences are different. It's like little kids that you give a magazine to, like babies that you give toddlers or whatever that you give a magazine to, and they're so used to interacting with their iPad and their touchscreen devices that they're doing all of the movements that they would do on their phone or device with the magazine. It's like that doesn't work that way, because the gestures don't work that way. But that's what they know. That's what they're used to. They're from a different generation. So I think NFT is just expanding into that digital realm that digital natives are comfortable with. I'm not as comfortable with it because I've kind of straddled both worlds with the generation that I'm coming to. Just like there's going to be something new on top of that your generation won't be comfortable with. So just trying to understand it. I think what they're doing with Top Shot is interesting. Seeing what the demand is and people wanting to have a piece of that. I'm wondering if we're in a place of collectibles, if there's any sort of bubble around it. I'm curious about that. Going from the fan first perspective, I never want fans to get. It feels like there's a lot of whales out there that are just buying up a lot of stuff. Yeah. So maybe it won't affect the everyday fan. But what I would hate to happen is for everyday fans to buy something and then like the market bottom out. But like that's the risk with any sort of asset,
Nah, and that makes me think about the shoe, industry. How stuff happens with that. But you mentioned blockchains, and I remember me and Spencer Dinwiddie, we had a conversation in like October, and just to see the growth in blockchains from then to now is just amazing. So you know, I'm right on par with what you're talking about. But uh, as I move into the last few questions that I have for you, let me give you an idea for what it's worth. My favorite TV show of all time is Martin. So
Yeah,
I'm a little bit older than what a lot of people think.
yeah, yeah. So
But
have you played that Martin trivia card game?
man, I see it and I've never been able to get my hands on it.
Man, I haven't watched Martin in years. I just remember like classic moments. But
Yeah,
we were at friend's game night, and they brought that out, and there were cats that like got every single like obscure questions. You know,
yeah.
it
Like
was crazy.
my sister, she asked me one day, she was like, what's Martin's apartment number? I was like 42. She was like, how do you know that? I'm like,
Yeah,
just a fan.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But no, hey, whoever those friends are that you just mentioned, give them my number because it sounds like we would be some good friends.
yeah.
But moving on, you've been posting some videos lately about you're getting back into shape. You're dropping that quarantine weight. You've been
Trying,
hooping.
trying.
Try, hey, and I'm rooting for you. Keep on going. But with that being said, I haven't asked this question on the show in a while, but I'm excited to bring it back for you. Which NBA player do you see yourself most in? For me, it's kind of limited to just 2K. I make my players after Damian Lillard. I'm trying to pull up from the parking lot and all that type of stuff. But, what NBA player do you see yourself most in?
I feel like when I was younger, I used to play like Paul Pierce.
Mm,
And I used to get that a lot. Like people would tell me that all the time. They say, "Oh man, you look like." People would be like, "Oh man, you look like Tim Duncan and you play like Paul Pierce. You look like Danny Green and you play like Paul Pierce." Like I used to get like jokes like that.
yeah.
But as I gotten older, I would say, I play a lot. I play like Boris D. Boris Diaw.
He posted
That's
in the corner.
I'm posting it. I'm in the corner. I'm posted up, and I'm just trying to play good defense. Like I joke with the people at before the pandemic happened, and I was dealing with some injury stuff. But I joke with all the young cats. Like, man, I'm damn near 40. I mean, I'm 40 now, but at the time I was damn near 40. I shoot threes and I play defense. That's it. Like
Yeah.
that's all. That's what I'm here to. And if there's an opportunity to do something else, then I'm gonna try that. But that's it.
Hey, teams need people like you, so hey, don't even sweat.
Hey man, well, if I'm in decent shape and if I'm in decent shape and um, you know not injured,
Yeah,
I'm gonna be able to contribute and pick up runs. It's not like something. I never was some like guy that had a chance to go play college basketball or anything
yeah,
like that. I just love the game, and I
yeah.
played for a long time. So
Nah, I'm not the same way. I just love to hoop. That's what it is at the end of
yeah,
the day.
well,
But my last question that I ask everybody on the show, and this one is pretty easy for me to have my answer for what the quote is going to be today. But my last question is, what is your favorite quote? So for me, I usually try to find a quote that's kind of relevant at this time. And, DMX, he just passed away, a legend. And one quote that I've been seeing on social media a lot is always trust everyone to be themselves, but trust that you can see them well. And he was just elaborating on that, just saying that, it's too hard not to trust people. So just trust that, they're being who they are and, never question your own perspective on the person that you're looking at. So, and that's the quote that really came to mind for me for this conversation. But do you have a favorite quote or a quote
man,
that comes to
honestly,
mind?
I'm not much of a. I mean, I think when I hear quotes, I'm inspired by them, but I don't really have. I can't say I have a favorite quote
Yeah.
or anything that I like latch on to like that.
Hmm.
My guy Phil Beckner was one of his
Hmm.
Dame's trainer and coach in college, and now he's been an assistant coach at high level college basketball programs and has moved on to just training Dame and a bunch of NBA players. He is like quote book. Um, he's got so whenever I need something inspiring, I go to him. So if he was on here, he'd pull a quote out for me, but I'm not one of those guys.
Hey, I got him on Twitter, and I've been in contact with him. We're working on something this summer, so I'm excited that you mentioned him, and I see his posts on Twitter, so I'm excited about
Yeah,
that.
he's one of my favorite people. Just like genuine, generous, all of those things. We go on. Been all across the world with him and Dame a few times. He's come on trips with us, and it's always a great experience. We just this year, obviously because of COVID, this is the first year I haven't been to um, overseas on a trip for work in a decade. Usually in the off season, we're traveling somewhere. So, but yeah, Phil's a greal guy, and you'll have a good experience with him.
All right, well, I appreciate you, Nate. I'm so thankful that you hopped on here and made time for me. It's been a great conversation. I really
Yeah, man.
appreciated talking about WWE, NBA, NFTs, all the three-letter things that we could talk about. I'm so glad that you hopped on here.
Yeah, man. I got on here. I'm trying to be on my best behavior. I didn't give you any macho man Randy Savage,
Yeah.
but we we're I'm excited for you and you know your hustle and persistence. At first, see, I get a lot of like trolls and people that aren't really about anything.
All right.
So at first, when you first were commenting, I'm like, who is this guy commenting on my page all the time? I'm like, I don't know him. I've never
Yeah.
interacted with him. He wants to interview me. He keeps saying, man, I want to interview you. I want to interview you. And I was just like trying to go about my day and like continue doing whatever. And then I think the last time you hit me, I finally went and looked at your page and like went through your page. I saw Chris did an interview with you. I saw the questions you asked. I was like, all right, man, this young man is actually like doing something positive. I need to make some time for him. And, that's how it came together. So I appreciate you. I appreciate your positivity, and I wish you luck, man. If there's anything I can do to help you out, help you along, connecting with people, I think just being genuine and not getting caught up on. I think the system today is so much. It's geared towards like trolling and trying to get engagement and all that other stuff. And I'd like to see people that aren't doing that win.
Man, well, I appreciate you, Nate. I appreciate the kind words, and I look forward to, you know, hopefully building a long-lasting relationship with you because that's what it's about at the end of the day. These conversations are cool, but at the end of the day, I'm just glad to, meet somebody that's interested in the same things that I'm interested in and also seeing their personality. So I'm so thankful that you hopped on here. Thankful to everybody that watched, and, stay tuned for more.
Yeah, man. DM me if you save this, DM me it out, and I'll share it on my Instagram stories and my Twitter.
Yes, sir. I got you, Nate. No worries. Appreciate you.
All right, man. Take care.